Hey, what's up? This is Amazin.reacts. Welcome to my channel. We're reacting to a brand new video today. Today's video is Marvel Spider-Man 2 was a total failure in hindsight. So, my perspective on the game, I love Spider-Man 2. It does receive a lot of hate, which I kind of think is unwarranted, but it is what it is. Everybody has their opinion. Like, I may talk about some of the stuff that the person that make this video they might not agree with, or you guys may not agree with. Feel free to give your opinion in the comments. But at the end of the day, these are his own opinions or her own opinion. I don't know what video this is. I just saw it pop up. All right, so let's go. TBP. Is this an ad? Oh no, no, this is intro.
I like Spider-Man. This should come as no shock to anybody who's
Okay.
frequented my channel for a while, given that I've made multiple videos on the matter. But either way, I do like Spider-Man. I wouldn't call myself a
This one of the
Marvel
main reasons I
fan
got the
as I've never
PS5.
read a comic book in my life, but I'll always go out of my way to watch whatever
Yeah, I didn't
movies
watch
or
comic
TV
books
shows
neither. I used to watch the cartoon one.
whenever a new one comes out. Growing up, I liked how cool he was as a superhero, but as I've grown older, I've grown to really like his relatability. He's awkward. He barely scrapes by a lot of the time. Sometimes his best just isn't good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
that's more real than any amount of goons punched. As an adult,
Yeah.
rewatching Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is downright difficult at times because of how true to life the depiction of burnout and overreaching really are. And those are themes that often follow Peter Parker throughout all of his interpretations, including in the most recent series of video game adaptations, the Marvel Spider Man games by
I
Insomniac.reacts.
thought all the games
That
were
said,
good.
as I've been staring at my game
Spider-Man
pile for
1, the
hours,
DLC with Miles
for
Morales,
anything
and
too
Spider-Man
epic to
2.
make videos on, my thoughts kept coming
Again, I'm
back to my
biased when it
own
comes to stuff like
PS5
this though.
games, and in particular my copy of Spider Man 2, and with that, I kept returning to a single train of thought. Man, Marvel's Spider Man 2 was such a disappointment, wasn't it? But I couldn't really nail down
Yeah, I
exactly
need to
what
hear
it
your
was that
reasons
made me
why.
consider it such a disappointment, so I wanted to
I do
explore
have
it
my
with you today.
reasons why I didn't like
And
certain
it's
parts of the
I
game though.
really do. I played through an entire trilogy of games back to back. I decided to go through the entirety of Spider Man 2018, Miles Morales, and Spider Man 2 in order to get a full range of my opinion. First of all, we need to
Oh
examine
no,
what
I
it
could.
was that
My
made
memory
Spider Man
better than that.
2018
We
and
ain't got to go through
possibly
all of
and
it.
Miles Morales so good in execution. Because all three of these games fundamentally play well. They are
I
innately
love swinging through
satisfying
the
games
city.
driven
When
by
I
the
was playing
constant
Elden Ring and I would
exploration
lose
of
to a
different
boss, I would
levels
go
and
back and do this, swing through the
environments.
city
They
like to
often
relax,
boast stealth segments, but the
and then I would
gameplay
go back and try to
overall is
beat the
good
boss.
on a gameplay front. But what elevates Spider Man 2018 for me is the way they're able to springboard the innately satisfying gameplay into one of the more compelling games I've played off the back of a superbly told story. And what the game really does well, especially in the first two-thirds of the game, is pacing, getting you to know these characters and why you should care. The story starts
Hmm.
off at a point in which Kingpin is finally taken down, sort of starting at the end of a story we weren't privy to. This creates a power vacuum
Wait, is this
that allows
Spider-Man
Peter
one or two?
demons to take
Like this
over.
Spider-Man
They
one?
make you think that this is the main plot on
Oh,
account of it
is it?
being
What is
very
this?
much
The intro?
presented as such,
Oh
but
yeah,
it
this
ends up
is.
being the
Way given
secondary
the
plot
story.
in the
Okay.
end. But they make use of this period of time to build up the characters and build up the story.
And I even
As
played
the
this game
story
late because at the time I
unfolds,
didn't
the
have a
relationship with
PS5,
his
so
wife didn't
I
work
couldn't
out.
play it.
They let you get to know the dynamics between Aunt May and Peter, and just how much of a pure, uncorrupted soul Aunt May is in a world full of madness. You learn about Mr. Lee, aka Mr. Negative, and his tragic backstory, and why
A
he's
lot of
so
y'all be
tirelessly
Mr.
committed to
Negative.
crime despite being the owner of the most successful homeless shelter in the city. And more than anything, you really get to know Doc Ock and get to see his relationship with Peter. They're good friends, business partners, and Doc Ock is a tragic person who you can't help but sympathize with. The way his funding gets heartlessly taken away by Norman Osborn, and the way it's revealed that his body is failing him due to prolonged exposure to toxins. The buildup is great to the point where you would be mistaken in thinking that
Yeah.
it's all set up for a second game, but surprise twist, taking down Martin Lee isn't the end of the game. It's merely the prelude to the payoff with the characters. The unleashing of
Yeah,
Devil's
I
Breath
like that
is a
too.
state of
They
mind
kind of
that
did that in
really
almost every
separate
game.
tear the city and Spider-Man himself apart.
Like you would have
Martin
like
Lee
the
owns
main
territory
villain.
from
Once you
one of
beat
the
him,
trusted
like
and impossible
through the story,
situations,
then
to
it would
Aunt
be a
May,
second
the
one.
most innocent soul of all, who's quietly revealed to be dying despite the fact that she has stolen
Spoiler
his
alert,
secret
R.I.P.
identity
Aunt May.
within the
But
homeless
I mean,
shelter.
by now you should have played the
It's not a
game.
story, I think the Devil's Breath chapter could have used some more missions. It felt a bit rushed, while the build up to defeating Martin Lee felt a bit bloated. So it felt like they could have taken some resources from that part of the game and given it to the later part of the game, but even at its worst, it still gets the
I want
job
to
done.
see.
And for
I
a game
know in
like
the next one he got to be
Spider-Man
Green
2, this was
Goblin,
superbly done, leading to a finale with such complex and nuanced
like Norman
personalities
Osborn.
that you can't help but see everyone's perspective, even if certain characters you're conditioned to like and
I
certain
didn't
characters
like Mary J. In
even Norman, despite
Mary
being
Jane in the
comes
first one.
across as partially
Like I
sociopath,
hated
was a
when I
man
had to
who
do her
stuck to for the
missions.
sake of his son, who he dearly loves. Quite frankly, after a string of disappointments, it's the thing that reignited my faith in Insomniac games. No kidding, between A Crack in Time and Spider-Man 2018, the storytelling of Insomniac games was universally caught between mediocre and absolute shit. Am I talking about Sunset Overdrive? You bet your
I
ass
never
I am.
played them type of
And
games.
just has
Oh, this
Meanwhile,
suit.
the
I did not
Spider-Man
like that
suit in
suit.
Spider-Man Miles Morales
I do
also
have a little.
breaks the
There was
negative
a clip of my
stereotype
reaction
of
because
what
I
the
Spider-Man
Spider-Man suit
2. I
evidence set out to do. It
played
was a more
online.
personal journey for
My
Miles as
reaction
he
to that
attempted to
suit,
become his own
his suit was
version of
horrible.
Spider-Man distinct from the original. Once again, it's not perfect
I
by
like.
any
I love
stretch.
this
It's a
suit though.
quintessential example of one of those stories where, despite being completely in the right, the main villain does something so irrationally stupid you have to stop them anyway. But as a coming of age story, I think it works pretty well. And with a banger and a lesser banger back to back, I feel like that gave me, and quite frankly, a lot of people, a lot of benefit of the
I
doubt
love the
as far as
story in Miles
believing in
Morales. I
Spider-Man
thought that
2.
was good.
We were willing to go into it with the
So
expectation
one
that it
and
would
two,
be a
like one and two,
story
I
that we
like
had no reason to know
Spider-Man
about.
one and the Miles Morales
And
story.
that's
I
why
love
on
both of
rewatch
them. I
today,
love
I
Spider-Man
found
two too
myself
as
kind
well.
of going through Spider-Man 2, accepting that there were some parts I was not fond of. But now that we're through the looking glass, so to speak, Spider-Man 2 was such a misguided project in so many
Yeah, that's
ways.
what I wanted
I'm
to get
firm
to. What you got
believer
on
in that
Spider-Man two?
saying that I think good gameplay can make a good game, but it's the
Now I ain't
most
played
important
Astrobot. They
gameplay that
say it
can
won
make
Game
a
of the Year or
perfect
something like
classic,
that.
whether that be through the story, the world, or something intangible like art style. And that, in this case, is what elevates a good game into an amazing game. Consequently, it's also what lowers a good game into a disappointment. So, what's the story of Marvel's Spider Man 2? Well, in similar fashion to 2018, after starting in a rather domestic and mundane introduction, you find yourself in a massive fight for the fate of New
I
York.
like the beginning
You're
of
up
this
against
game.
the Sandman.
Against the
First, we have
Sandman. I
Harry Osborn
thought that
appear
was
having
good.
miraculously recovered from his illness that was hinted at in the first game, and he decides to hire a recently unemployed Peter at his newly founded foundation. Whereas business partners, the two of them are going to heal the world. And from here, the game takes on a somewhat similar structure to the first game in the sense that the first two-thirds of the story tell a story in its own right, but also uses the story to springboard into a different but connected story for the final third. This time, the first two-thirds are about Craven the Hunter. Craven is probably the best villain in the game from a pure characterization standpoint. I'm not too familiar with him outside of this game, but the impression I
I
get
saw
is
that
that
movie,
honestly,
but
he's
I
the
knew
most
about Kraven from like the
well-rounded and
cartoons.
hence the greatest
I
villain
thought he was a
because
good
he
villain.
enjoys the
I
shoot.
wasn't too
And
sure
that's
on him
what
at
makes him
first,
an
but
effective Spider-Man
no, he
villain.
did his thing.
I could be off base, but that's the impression I get. In this instance, though, Craven is seemingly freeing different supervillains, but he's actually capturing them and forcing them into fights to the death with himself. The reason being, Craven has terminal cancer, and as such, he wants to go out on his own terms, losing to a worthy opponent. Meanwhile, it turns out the reason why Harry was
Oh,
able to
he
be
like
here was
Sakuna.
due to something all too familiar to Spider Man fans, the symbiote. But the symbiote attaches itself to Peter and he becomes a total dickbag, while Harry then begins to deteriorate on account of his condition and without the thing that was keeping him healthy. Then, after Miles basically beats some sense into Peter, they try to destroy the symbiote, but it instead attaches itself back to Harry, who then becomes Venom.
Yeah,
Following this, we enter the Devil's Breath portion of the story, i.e., the second but ultimately main story, where the symbiote uses Harry's own good intentions to trick him, insisting that they heal the world by infecting everyone in New York with the symbiote,
that was a
therefore making them
that was
immune
a
to the cure.
surprise to me
And
because
eventually, they even go on
honestly,
to infect the world.
I thought like Harry Osborn. Normally, it was Eddie Brock that was Venom that I was used to.
When you write it all down,
So I
especially
was
from a
surprised that
gameplay
they chose
standpoint, where the
Harry.
game really falters is in the specific structure. This might actually be one of the most bafflingly poorly structured narratives I've seen as far as AAA video games are concerned. At least of those that
I
make
do
me
have some
think.
problem with the narrative,
Use,
but
though
I'll get to
misguided
it in a
in many
minute.
ways, but
He
pretty much
he
all of
might
the
get
ways
to
that
it.
it's misguided or baffling can come down to one major issue. The pacing in this game is dreadful, and that can come from different things. The first and most obvious thing would be the mission layout. I want to be clear. I think the whole Sony story game thing is vastly
I thought the pacing was okay for Peter Parker's portion of the game. Now with Miles, I didn't like his portion of the story up until when he got caught by Craven. That's for me is when his like story like actually like blended in with Peter Parker's story. Like a lot of times whenever I get the Miles, I was like I gotta do this to get to like to get the story moving forward. But honestly, I was like I want to continue on Peter Parker's storyline because Miles was doing like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff, and then once he got captured, or once they went, yeah, once he got captured, that's when it kind of really got into like he was intertwined into the main story. But Miles Morales' story, for the most part, at the beginning, it kind of felt like it was a side mission that I was like thrown into.
overblown. First party Sony games tend to have a certain amount of walkie
I
talkie
love God of War
cutscenes
too.
where
I
you're
played
seeing
that.
something in gameplay but have no control over what you're doing other than
I didn't like the Valhalla
I don't
one.
tend to
I
have an
didn't like
issue with
that.
this because, first of all, plenty of games do it. Second of all, I prefer it over a standard cutscene because, at the very least, you have agency in your own right to go around and experience the world at your own pace while the story is happening to you. Third of all, most of the games I've seen do this aren't nearly as story heavy as people claim. Like, if you take a game that's ostensibly a movie game, then take a cutscene compilation and a full long play, the disparity is usually pretty vast.
I never played The Last of Us though.
Most games I've seen do this don't actually do them very often, and they're rarely long. And if they are, they're usually positioned at a point in the story where, if you like the game, you're invested enough to be okay with it. However, I think
I
Marvel
guess that's
Spider
why I
Man
wasn't
2
okay
does
with
the
it.
worst job at this style of storytelling I've seen in any game. Now, let's take a look at Spider Man 2018 for a second, because there were scenes like this in 2018, and even
No, I
Miles
was
Morales.
invested.
But there's a big difference. In the former two games, these types of scenes were rare and were often fairly quick. For example, there's a mission in 2018 where you have to crash at Feast because you got evicted, and all you need to do is go to May's office, which takes like 20 seconds. However, you can explore the homeless shelter and speak to people if you want, get some fluff dialogue and whatnot. But ultimately, the mission is still short, and there was a single example in Miles Morales where you had a slow story mission, but even that was one time, and the main thrust of that mission took 5 minutes maybe. Plus, it was pretty deep into the game. The point is, the action to slow exposition ratio was pretty good in those games. They always make sure to take you back to the action as quick as possible. When you
Yeah.
have to do a slower mission, they make sure to earn it. They make sure that if they have to slow down, it's already at a point where you're invested and are willing to
Even if it was
the game.
supposed to be a
However,
fast mission,
Spider
I
Man 2
normally walk
lets
around and
every
get
major
everybody
story
dialogue
mission as an
anyway.
interminably long, slow paced story mission. Basically, this is when Harry returns. So after walking around May's house for a bit too long, you have to ride your bike over to your old high school and then break in for old time's sake. This is
But I
interspersed
think it
with the
helps
fact
build
that
the story
having
though.
previously broken in when you were both in high school, this is obviously meant to establish the
Now,
relationship.
I think it will sound a little bit hypocritical coming from me because I hated Mary Jane's missions in the first Spider-Man, so I could kind of understand where he getting to in this one. But I didn't feel like it. It was at the beginning of the game though, so like it wasn't like it brought you a whole bunch of action. Which the beginning of the game, you did start off fighting Sandman, but it didn't bring you a whole bunch of action, then slow you down. It was I think you kind of needed this to kind of like show their relationship
Between Peter and Harry, but it goes on for like
because that's a
20
big part of
minutes,
the
and most
story.
of it is a boring stealth mission where you don't even get any interaction between Peter and Harry. I feel like you could have cut this mission completely down, had it to where you only do the short segments in the modern day setting, and then relegate the flashback scenes to short highlights.
And I do think they do this to kind of get you ready because you've been playing Spider Man where you just punching and kicking. I think they do this to kind of give you a slower pace, like so you can learn the mechanics of using the stealth in the game. So I believe that was the intention of putting it in there, because normally whenever you're doing stealth, you can just jump down and start fighting. That's my motto. But in this one, they wanted you, if you were new to the game, to kind of understand the mechanics of like the stealth. So they made it to where he had to do those things as far as like the drawing the enemy's attention to move, maneuver, and stuff like that. So I think that's why I think that was more important than like what he's saying as far as like the narrative and slowing the pacing of the game. I think it's important to kind of give people and show people how to actually do stealth.
You could have cut this mission down to like 5 minutes if you wanted. Instead, we're barely in the door and are expected to eat shit. Then, only a few missions later, you have a mission where you have to explore the Emily May Institute. Once again, we're barely in the door. We have to walk around this facility for 15 minutes. Later on, you go to Coney Island and walk around doing boring activities until you trigger the event that moves you to the next
Yeah,
story.
but those
You're
activities
going on
weren't that bad
rides
though.
to do many
Like you don't
boss
have to do
fights,
any of
slowly
these.
walking
You
around
really
the
just got to
city
go to
for an
like.
eternity. And another mission of this
Well,
description
I
is
think it's
towards
maybe
the
one
end,
of them you
where
got
you
to
have to
do.
walk around the mansion where Craven and his men are staying and slowly and laboriously trigger the story segment where you feed Craven's bodyguard, this tiger, meat with tranquilizer in it. And while a good chunk of these missions do eventually get
Again, I
replayable,
really do
more
think
than
this is
that, this
just
game
to
hammers my good
so you
point
can
that
use the
story
mechanics of the
needs to
game.
flow
Like they
methodically.
work so hard to put these mechanics in the game. They're like, listen, we gotta get them to use it at least once or twice, because then you might approach the playthrough totally different, and in a way Spider-Man normally does, like in the I don't know about the comics, but in like the TV show and stuff like that, like the cartoon, and then in real life, like Spider-Man wouldn't just go in there punching and kicking, even though that's my play style. But I feel like they probably was just wanting people to use the actual mechanics of the game to give you a different perspective. And if you get stuck and find it hard, like if you have it on the hardest difficult, stealth come in handy, like reducing the number of enemies before you actually get caught and fight your way through it. So I think it's just a way to kind of force people to use the mechanics of the game because they put it in there. They want you to use it.
Dull ass missions that half the time don't even build the story particularly effectively. I feel like good
Like I was
quality
mad they took the
storytelling
science part
really
out of it.
drives
When
up
you
the
would go to
quality
the
of
in the
every
first one, you
mission.
would go to the
I'm still
lab
smart
and
enough
they
to
would have those little
completely
puzzles.
accepting of the dullness that this entails, but I'm sorry, this just ain't it. You could theoretically cut each of these missions in half, and even once you're actually in the action is good. I would argue the combat is actually far better than the combat gameplay from the first game, especially. The parrying system is nice. The multiple varieties of web
Yeah.
and combat abilities makes for some good variety. It's solid, but in a lot of these missions, they feel far too dragged out. For example, there's a sequence of missions one after another where at first Miles is trapped with Martin Lee and is expected to fight to the death. The
Mm-hmm.
door goes free.
I love this
You
part of
fight
it.
three separate health bars and then fight an internal battle against Martin Lee as he's attempting to infiltrate your mind.
All
Then,
right,
after this
I can agree
grand
with him on that.
climax, you fight another three health bar boss fight, followed by another three health bar boss fight in the
Oh
exact
no,
same mission.
I,
That's three
like
bosses
I
in
never
one
get tired of being like
mission.
Spider Man.
And
But I
we're
can
talking
understand
an
this
hour long
like
gameplay.
complaint.
Is there any reason why every single fight had to be dragged out for so
Yeah,
long?
I can
It seems
understand that.
like the simplest tasks take
But I
forever.
never got tired of it.
Fighting
I
the
guess maybe
symbiote
that's what they
takes
were going for.
forever.
Like they'll never get
Fighting
tired of
Peter's
beating and
mind
punching people up
mistakenly
as
by the
Spider Man.
symbiote takes forever. The boss fight with Scream has four separate health bars for no discernible reason.
Yeah,
And I think most egregiously, the entire first mission takes forever. I understand the idea of making the Sandman boss fight long and elaborate with multiple different stages within the boss fight being
that's what
useful
I'm
to
saying. I
tease
don't
out
find
the
these
mechanics in a more intimate setting, but
like
the
I
original boss fight
like
was
just
good enough
going
for
around beating
multiple
up
speed up
people.
missions
It's
when
kind
I
of
was trying to
therapeutic when
do
you like
almost
just
nothing would have changed.
run
Is
around
there
beating up
any
people as
reason
Spider
why they
Man.
needed to make everything so elaborate? And the sad thing is, despite much of the game
I
being
just
so
hate when you beat
smart, the
everybody up and then
story
there's one
just
person that's
remained
like, I don't
incomplete in
know,
certain areas.
stuck behind a
Part of
car
why
or
I've
something
used
and
the
it
phrase
won't
the
let you
simple
move
part,
on
and I
because you
feel
can't
like
find them.
that's the perfect way to describe it, because this game obviously tries to do far too much in not enough time. And as such, there are a lot of things that could have been cool but simply had no time to be fleshed out. It's like every individual moment is stretched out, but the story beats them so.
It's just I feel like with this game, because Spider-Man 1 and the Miles Morales, because it did so good and people enjoyed it, I feel like you don't need to change it if the like if it like as far as like the Mary Jane in the first one, I know people didn't like that. And you see in the second one, I think you had to do it like you were her like maybe once or something like that. Like they got rid of it. But for the most part, I feel like it did the same thing as like the first one done and even add a little bit extra on it. So yeah.
Feel rushed because the game simply tries to
Yeah,
do
if it
too
ain't broke,
much.
don't
The
fix it.
overarching plot attempts to tell the entire symbiote arc in like 15 hours, but really it's more like 5. The arc of Harry coming back from the dead, catching up with old friends, realizing his strength, the symbiote bonding to Peter, Peter turning to the dark side, defeating the symbiote
I feel
returning
like
to
it could
life,
get
and
worse.
Harry
Like they could
finally
add some
succeeding
extra
in
stuff like,
defeating
oh,
Venom.
maybe people want to
Meanwhile,
see
also
this
got
and
the
then it goes
unexpected Craven
horrible.
in there, as well as the payoff to the previous game with Martin Lee, as
Like
well as
leave
trying to
well
fit in
enough
more other
alone.
subplots of varying relevance. The game makes the
Now,
same
oh, I
mistake.
agree with that. These subplots, his subplot, I did not care for it. Like I told you, his story didn't get interesting until he got captured. Once he got captured and he became part of the main story, I love from there on out. I loved his storyline. I didn't like the new suit that they gave him. I don't know. It had like powder blue or toothpaste blue line into it. It was just weird. But other than that, it was good.
Take is Spider Man 3 the movie and tries to do too much, it also attempts to tell a story that needed more space. As such, many plot beats take a hit. For example, there's a point in the story in which Harry realizes that the symbiote gives him amazing powers and he becomes your de facto sidekick. I believe they were essentially trying to do an Agent Venom type deal here, something that a lot of people have a lot of fondness for, but this lasts all of 2 missions before the symbiote bonds itself to Peter. The whole thing about the symbiote.
But see, I feel like because he was saying about the story moving slow, and then he wanted more time with Harry being like the I don't know when he had the suit on before. Like I feel like for me it was like I can't wait to get the suit. Like I can't wait to become Black Suit Spider Man. So 2 missions with Harry doing it, I feel like that's okay. Like I'm ready to become like the Black Suit Spider Man. So I understand why he was mad that he only got to do 2 missions with Harry. Or maybe he's talking about that's the rush in the story, but you can go ahead and rush it. I'm ready to get to being like Black Suit Spider Man.
It's kind of a neat idea. It attempts to manipulate the host by preying on their insecurities, their negative emotions, in order to make the
I mean,
host
which
subservient.
we knew
And
that.
in this case, it makes Peter subservient by preying on the fact that he's still heartbroken over his inability to save all the people he's failed to save, most
Mm-hmm.
notably Aunt May. But as for the time spent with Peter being corrupted by the symbiote, this lasts like 4 missions. And in canon, he has the symbiote for all of like a day and a half. Matter of fact, there's this subplot about how Mary Jane needs to write a front page worthy news article for the Daily Bugle to keep her job, and she needs to do it within a week of the game starting, and she decides to write a hit piece against Spider Man after one battle with the lizard causes too much destruction, followed by a snarky conversation that Peter has with her. And that's the impetus for her writing a scathing news report. And then later, they do this thing where the symbiote attaches itself to Mary Jane and she becomes Scream. In this case, preying on her insecurities in regards to Peter and their relationship, but she gets turned to Scream and then she's able to snap out of it after a single boss fight, which in real time is like 10 to 20 minutes, which means the plot point ends just as quickly as it began. And
Again, I don't see what's wrong with it. Like it had 3 health bars, maybe 4. I can't remember it, but like I feel like that was enough time. Like beat it out of her, and then so she can become back Mary Jane again. Like I don't see nothing wrong with it. Cause I was over the fight after like the first two health bars, and then but now I do like the storyline between them two. Even it preying on her insecurities and stuff like that. It was good because now she knows what he was going through when it was happening to him, so it kind of helps them kind of bond over it.
hilariously, Mary Jane's inner turmoil of wanting to be a journalist at the Daily Bugle and her relationship with Peter pretty much begins and ends in this mission. She gets a call from J. Jonah Jameson about how great her front page story was, and she gets a promotion. The exact same mission, she decides to hell with the Bugle and quits. All of this, literally all of this, could have been cool if they'd have just let these plot beats breathe. If you ask me, I feel like there's a lot of this game that feels plainly truncated. And I feel like the reason why this game can't make the most out of its ideas can largely be blamed on a lot of unnecessary bloat. Aside from the examples I've already mentioned, there's a particular mission early into the game where you have to help Black Cat. She's being hunted by Craven's
Oh
hunters,
yeah, I
and to make
remember
her
that one.
chase, she steals a magic wand which she wants to use to get to Paris. Obviously, with her past history, we have difficulty giving her the benefit of the doubt, but ultimately she keeps her word. She teleports to Paris, gives you the wand, and that's
Oh,
that.
and then yeah, it didn't even work. It that was kind of a useless
That
mission.
mission.
I agree
I
with
get
him
that
on
this
that.
mission allowed them to show off the hardware by having us teleport around a lot, but what point did that mission serve from a story perspective?
Yeah, it
The
didn't.
only
That's
thing
what
that
I said
mattered
about
was Black
Miles
Cat
stuff. It was
and
kind of
her
like, and
location.
then if I want to see the interaction, I'd rather see Spider Man and Black Cat.
Heard some chatter about the steel foundry in Williamsburg. The radio I swiped from those hunters. Sounds like tombstones there.
But they wasted time, effort, and resources that could have been allocated elsewhere on something that felt completely superfluous.
Yeah,
And there are
I agree with
multiple
him on that.
instances of this, and unfortunately, a
Same
lot
thing
of
with
that
his
felt
storyline up until he
disjointed.
got
Here's
captured.
the thing, I misremembered Miles being less imperative to the story, but now that I've played it, I can safely say that he is a lot more important than I remember, but still not nearly enough. There's a large chunk of the game that doesn't actually involve Miles at all because the main
What I say, I feel like in his beginning, I was like, yo, get me back to being Peter Parker. Like, I did not care about his storyline in the beginning until he got captured and then he started intertwining. And yes, he was a big part of the story. So I agree with him on that.
part of the plot has to do with Peter, MJ, and Harry. Not only that, but most of the villains don't really involve Miles because they are villains specific to Spider-Man Classic. What in that
With
does Miles
I think that's understandable because this is like Spider Man is the original. Like the first game was about him, Peter Parker. You know, he Miles had the DLC, and then so he is the main character. So all the villains will be fixated on him, and I feel like Miles should be considered a side character in this aspect. So yeah, I understand why the villains are kind of like that, but I do feel they could have, I don't know, put Miles somewhere in there a little bit more. Like do a little bit more dual fighting or something like that. I don't know.
have with Sandman or the Lizard or the Scorpion? Nothing. And he feels like a hanger on. And to be quite frank, that is part of the story. The idea that he is sometimes a hanger on, and the fact that sometimes he plays second fiddle because he's not as quote unquote important as Spider Man Classic. But the idea of
It's
establishing
understandable.
something like that is you're supposed to subvert it, not reinforce it by not giving him enough to do for 2/3 of the game.
Yeah, I get with you on that one.
Instances where you're obliged to play as Miles and have to do
Yeah,
ostensibly
that
the
was
main
horrible.
mission, but is only a mission that establishes a string of side missions. The most egregious of which, in my opinion, would be the mission on Coney Island where you have to test out the Mysterio, where, among other things, you have to do a 3 or 4 minute rhythm sequence.
Yeah, this was horrible. I agree with him on that. Yeah. And then I was like getting some of them wrong, and it didn't even seem like it mattered. It was like, yo, you done with this.
Did they waste resources on this? This is such a low
I agree.
gaming thing to do. Meanwhile, when it comes to the side missions specific for Peter, guess what? They're all completely optional. None of them are forced upon you. You can
Yeah.
choose to do them, or you can choose not to. But they needed to give you a reason to play as Miles, so they made it a point to make side missions main missions.
Yeah,
Because
they
they
should have
couldn't
made
give
the
you
side
more
missions
main
a little bit
missions
better.
because guess what? He wasn't as imperative to the plot as he should have been. And that's the tragic thing. When you really look at the involvement of Miles in the story, some of the issues in the pacing can sort of be blamed on him. This was a major element
Yeah.
of the game's advertising, the idea of freely being able to switch between two Spider-Men, but apparently Captain Obvious wasn't around to let the writers know that you can't attempt to focus on two main characters equally because one is always going to come across as more superfluous, or at worst, come across as an afterthought.
Now I think in a
This
video
is why
game you
Peter
could have pulled it off.
Parker's
They just
given
didn't
the fact
didn't
that
do
they
a good
gave
job
him
on that.
just as many alternative costumes as Peter, but that's indicative of the struggle right there. Miles has existed since like 2011, and it's great to see that he's so quickly become as iconic as he is, but you can't attempt to equally focus on him when it comes to content like alternate costumes, because Peter Parker's Spider-Man has been around since like the 60s, so he has so many more decades of alternate costumes to mine from. The attempt was admirable, but in execution, it didn't really work out, which is a
No, I don't
statement
really
of
care for that.
the whole game, really.
I
The
kept
side
the main. I
missions,
normally
there's
just keep the
pretty
main
things they've
suits.
done with Miles that wouldn't have taken away. If you excluded him from the game overall, that leaves a big old elephant in the room as far as where the guy is and what he's doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could have theoretically reallocated those resources into fleshing out the more important characters. If you try and give him equal billing and try to give him just as much story involvement as Peter, then the game risks being bloated, but at least then you'd be making the most out of him being there. But if you tag him on as an afterthought, well, he's an afterthought. They put themselves into an impossible situation, and I feel like he was
I
caught
think they made up for it in the
too.
like the last act.
So, regardless of where he falls at a
Like
moment,
the last half, they
it's
made up for his
in a great
absence.
spot.
Yeah, he did have a
Want to
horrible
give him the
storyline
justice that he
in the
deserves.
beginning.
I like Miles. I really do. I thought he was really good in his own game. A game where he had relationships with all the characters,
Yeah,
a story
but I
written
mean,
by
it was
him,
just one
and
Spider Man,
yet
so it's
he
easier
has
to
a lot
write
to
him.
chew on in this game. It's some of the best storytelling this game has to offer. He had a quiet character arc going on in the background between himself and Martin Lee. At one point, he has to rescue Martin, but he hesitates because he feels that Mr. Negative deserves to drown. Much of his dialogue after that involves him considering what he would do if he had the chance to face Martin Lee again.
Oh, and he got that chance too.
It's not on you. You can't let him live up here. It's just another kind of prison. It's not that easy. I said it was. And he comes to terms with his feelings. He wants more than anything to
See, I
get
like
back
this
to
part of. I
Miles.
like
Did to Miles's dad, but
like
he also
everything after he got
understands that
captured. It
living
was,
with
I
your
loved it.
anger
It was
will
10
only
out
ever
of 10.
bring you more pain and suffering. So while he knows he can never forgive Martin, he's able to let go of his anger. And this also leads to Martin Lee's character arc, where he goes
Yeah,
to see
Sasuke could never.
Miles and is able to see the suffering that his own blind desire for revenge against Norman Osborn has wrought. They end up working together to save Peter, and Martin ends up turning himself over to the police as a signifier of him turning a new leaf, hoping to be able to one day atone for his sins. It's a good story arc that bubbles up in the background and is given proper screen time, proper build-up, and proper payoff. The
Mm-hmm.
same would go for Craven. After refusing to die in a hospital, he finally finds a worthy warrior to fight and die at the hands of with Venom. That's another story that's given proper build-up and is paid off in a rather satisfying way. But the sad fact is, neither of these things are the main plot. So good as they may have been, you're still dealing with the issues of simultaneous bloat and truncated storytelling. And the biggest casualty of this would be the entire story of Venom and the symbiote. Let me be clear here. While Venom was only introduced in the 80s, I don't think it's controversial to say that Venom at this point is the most iconic Spider Man antagonist.
Oh no, he is the one of the most. Green Goblin and him is one of the like you gotta have them. Like without a doubt, like Venom, like yes.
Full stop. And they completely wasted it. They took one of the coolest characters in comic books and made it so that from introduction to defeat, he was there for maybe 2 hours of gameplay. I remind you,
That's good because we had the whole
music
Craven
an entire
storyline.
story arc in which symbiotes took over the city, which, if they weren't specifically ripping off Web of Shadows, it certainly felt like they were. Then again, Web of Shadows was probably based off some other older comic. It's
Yeah,
one of
but I
those
mean maybe
moments
they
that
was just doing a
authors
callback
write
to it.
can't fully reconcile it.
Oh, we
So
got the players
two
Venom
and a half
too.
hours, all for the Venom story arc. I understand that with the story playing out the way it did, there's only so much that you could have done
Yeah,
with
that
the
was
first
good.
story
Like they
arc.
can't make the game
So
go
that's
on
not a
forever.
huge story to mine from that other than stopping the symbiote. But
They
sure,
should have
it
did
did
something about that
rewrite the
suit
Venom
Miles had.
story arc so it didn't feel so rushed and so half-assed. It should have theoretically taken up half the game in order to give it the weight that it deserved. And just looking at the way the game played out,
Nah,
with
I
Miles
think that part is
allocated
good.
resources, reality
Like
hit
Venom
him
was in
so
there the
painfully
correct amount of
that would
time.
pump up the parts that needed to be pumped up more than they were. Cut down missions like the cleanup after the Sandman boss fight. Turn missions like exploring the old
Yeah, you
island
can cut
world
back
or
on that
exploring the
cleanup after the
newly made
Sandman.
Foundation into truncated cutscenes that get the point across but don't eat up tons of resources and time. Cut out missions that serve little to no points, like the Black Cat mission,
No, I
and
agree with
I
that.
hate to admit it, certain missions for Miles that really should have been
Yeah, I
optional.
agree with that
And
too.
then take those extra resources and extra time and really rebalance the game to focus on paying off the more important elements. Give
Yeah,
us more time with Agent Venom. Give us more time with
I don't
Peter
really care
being
about the Agent
and
Venom.
the symbiote. Make that payoff of Peter turning a new leaf feel earned. Then, using every other last bit of resources you have, pump up the third act full of steroids. Have Scream be more than just a one mission character. Have the symbiote takeover be longer and more
I don't know. I feel like she's not a
or
main
if you want
character.
to compensate for truncating the story in
Like
one
having her be get more time. Like she's not like a main villain of even this story. So I feel like if you want to get time to get the Venom, like that would have just lessened the story time on Venom, unless you make the game longer. But like I don't know.
involvement of Miles in the first part of the game, you can use the third act. There's the aforementioned mission where Miles and Lee have to save Peter. What if you expand on that idea? What if you have a chunk of missions where the entire city is taken over and the only people left are Miles and Lee? And you have to save Peter and MJ in order to start clawing the city back. I think that's an idea with legs that could have extended the third act by a couple of missions, and that's only one idea. Point is, Marvel's Spider Man 2 at the end of the day comes across as a giant missed opportunity. There were a lot of neat ideas and some rather well executed ideas. I would even go as far as to say that there were some parts of the game that actually surprised me in the sense of I remembered the game being worse than once I played it, I actually found more to like. But the overall
Hmm.
package is a complete and total
Like
mess.
I think I played this
Too many
game three
resources and
times.
priorities all
I
in the
played
wrong
through it.
places. And that's why, to me, it can only ever be classified as a complete and total disappointment. It's the type of game where
Nah, I
I
feel like
was
he
inherently
kind of like
friendly
rage
and I
baiting right
really
there.
wanted to pop in a Spider-Man game to
Because
screw
there
around
have
with
been
him.
plenty of games that are
And
way
honestly,
worse
he's
than this.
probably the best choice. But I
Like I
also
feel like if
feel like
this
I'm never gonna want to
was like a
start playing a
disappointment, then
Spider-Man
I don't
game
know what
because
game
there's
could
so many
make you
times where I get to
satisfied.
this specific mission and think to myself, "Oh God, not this
Like
again."
yeah, I'm not
And
saying this is the
I
best
want to
game in the
quit,
world. What I'm
just
saying
I will
like
not bother. Don't forget, I
disappointment,
grinded
nah.
through Spider-Man 2018, even if the gameplay isn't as refined or as deep, because that's a game that engages me on a different level. And like I said, it's because of that game that I did hold Spider-Man 2 to such a high level of scrutiny. But even on its own, I can't exactly say that I would ever feel the urge to replay Marvel's Spider-Man 2 all the way through again.
Nah, I played
That's
it.
all I've got. If you
Yeah,
like what
three
I do here
times.
and want to support the channel, you can leave a like, tell me what you think, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you're always up to date on what I'm doing. I have been the king of snark style right here on Tactical Bacon Productions, and I will
Oh,
see you next
tactical
time.
bacon
Stay
production.
crispy, my friends.
Nah, some of the stuff I agree with, especially about the Miles storyline, feeling like it was too detached and it was a part of the main story. I feel like they should have put that as side missions and had a different storyline to kind of intertwine him with Peter Parker Spider Man. But utter failure, no. I think the game was good as it was. I like the villains from Craven to Venom. I like that they cut back on Mary Jane stealth missions. I like at the beginning they did the stealth mission to kind of get you back into it. If you play other games, then when you go back to this one, you kind of need a refresher on how to like maneuver, especially if you're on the hardest difficulty. It gets hard to beat up all those enemies at once. So you need the slow paced stealth missions from Spider-Man to kind of get you into the mechanics of the game. And then after that, you can, if you want to use them or not, you can. And Agent Venom, I didn't really care for it. I did like that it was, but I didn't want a lengthier time with him. I like the time that he got because it showed kind of what the suit could do, like when they were in the zoo and they were fighting Craven. So I thought that was pretty good. And then going into Spider Man, I think that was one of the main things like everyone was waiting on. It was the Venom, and then it was Black Suit Spider Man, like him becoming Black Suit Spider Man with the symbiote. Like you were waiting for that. Like you don't need longer time with Agent Venom if you waiting on that because that's more iconic. And then of course him becoming Venom, but I feel like the time we got with Venom was lengthy. He had like a whole, like the whole last act was him transforming the town. Like he had like a whole story arc that I thought was pretty good. But overall, I enjoyed the video. Like it's his opinions and I have mine, so you know, isn't neither one of us is just 100% completely right. It's just based on opinions. But I have the link to this video in the description. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you like and subscribe. Comment below if you have any suggestions or if you think got any critiques on my opinion. Let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.